Guardian newspaper from Hong Kong, where he's hiding out at the moment. Well, many of the companies involved in PRISM, the tracking of data by US security agencies, have bases here in Ireland. The Data Protection Commissioner here is Billy Hawkes. He's with me now in our studio. Billy Hawkes, thank you very much for coming in to us. Did you know that data generated here was being treated like this?
I don't think it'll come as much of a surprise that in fact US intelligence services do have access to information from US companies. In the case of companies that have data centers here like Microsoft and Google, these are American companies, obviously subject to US law. They have data centers in different parts of the world. They happen to have centers also here in Ireland. So I'm not sure it'll come as a great surprise to anybody that in the rather murky world of intelligence there is significant power to access information for intelligent purposes.
But did you know they were doing this?
I knew in a general way. I don't regard this particular revelation as particularly new. I think I'd have known as a matter of general knowledge, as would people in general, that intelligence services have extensive access and rights of access indeed to information. Indeed, under our own Irish law and European law, our own Gardaí have significant rights of access to information, again subject to safeguards. And I think the key point that was being made by the whistleblower are these safeguards adequate in this area? In other words, if you accept that there is a justification for access to this information for anti-terrorism purposes primarily, then the argument is, are the oversight systems sufficient to balance up the significant interference with people's rights?
Well, what about for people who are nervous about this, who feel that okay, you say that they might have had a suspicion that whatever they did on the internet was being tracked, but that everything they do is being monitored, and everything they do was being gathered in this manner in massive data centers in Utah, in Texas and in Georgia. Is none of our information online private? Do you not have any obligations to, the description of your job, Data Protection Commissioner, is none of our data protected?
No, I think it is, obviously, and I think we're talking here about intelligence services targeting particular individuals for good reasons.
But it seems to be more blanket than that, judging from the revelations in The Guardian and the Washington Post last week, that it's all information.
No, and I think that is where the concern would be. The concern might be that would be of abuse of a power that was given for a legitimate reason, in other words, to try and identify people who might be engaged in terrorist activities. Naturally, I'll be concerned about this, but as I said, the type of exercise here goes beyond what data protection law is designed for, which is essentially the normal world, which is not the world of intelligence and security. Is designed to protect people against, if you like, day-to-day activity, to make sure that your bank or your supermarket doesn't leak information about you, and that you can be reasonably secure that your information is okay there.
Okay, well, take Google and Microsoft, who've just built very large data centres here in Dublin. Is it credible that the traffic that's being captured is not going through this PRISM process, as we've heard about over the last week or so?
No, on the contrary, I would expect that data held in data centres in Ireland, or indeed anywhere else, because these companies typically have centres in different parts of the world, and you won't know at any moment where the data is in these centres. I think it's nothing particularly new that there would be access by intelligence services to this data if it was required for legitimate reasons. That is, things like searching out for terrorists, because again, to be fair to the intelligence community, they get blamed when some terrorist act happens and says, why didn't you discover these people? Their argument is, how do you expect us to find a needle in a haystack? At least give us the power to access communications data.
Do you have any questions to ask of some of these large internet companies based in Ireland on the basis of what you've heard over the last week?
Well, what they have all denied that they voluntarily give out this information. They've been very clear that they only comply with legally enforceable instructions from law enforcement authorities, and certainly when we carried out an investigation of Facebook Ireland, which we have responsibility for in terms of users outside of North America, they were very clear, and we investigated that in fact they have very strict procedures for giving access to law enforcement. So what we seem to be talking about here in fact is something much broader, that perhaps they didn't even know this type of access was going on, because they have strict procedures themselves. But beyond that, we again, it is not new, certainly it isn't even new to me, that intelligence services have access to telecommunications information under rather vague permissions.
Billy Hawkes, Data Protection Commissioner here in Ireland, thank you very much for joining us in our studio this morning.